All right, so for this Python script, we are going to be scraping historical NFL standings from 2010 all the way up to the current year, which is 2021. But the 2021 season hasn't started yet, so the furthest we could go is 2020. So the first thing that we do is, of course, import our libraries and get our environment set up. Something that we've seen before and nothing too crazy. And I also want to remind you guys again that the coding has been formatted in a more presentable way. When I'm actually doing the coding, it's like a bit all over the place, trying new things and seeing what works and seeing what don't work and what things I may need to take care of down the road. So to begin with, this is our URL or our link, and it's just basically looking at the NFL standings. And so because we want to look at historical standings or historical records from 2010 to 2020, we have to have a way of the loop recognizing to change the link to the given year. Like if we have 2010, once that is completed, we need to change to 2011 and so on and so forth. So currently we're on 2020, and you can see we have the standings and we have the teams and the records for when they finish in the 2020 season. So again, nothing too crazy here, and this is actually a page that we worked before in the previous data set. So it's to come to no surprise that this is a page we've seen before. So hopping back over to our code, we do the standard web scraping procedures, or the beginning web scraping procedures, getting all linked together, putting it, reading it, putting it through a parser, and then we need to try and find what we are going to scrape. So the first thing we are going to scrape is the column names. And if you take a look at the site here, we have win, loss, tie, percent, points for, points against, net points, and home, road, and it kind of repeats. So we have a couple of duplicate columns that we will take care of, and that is the percent column. Okay, so on this particular web page, we are going to look for the table header, and then we're going to clean the text up a little bit. We are going to remove the new line character and replace it with just an empty space, or not even an empty space. Then after that, we are going to rename that given data value to NFL team. And the reason for this is because when we scrape from that first position, it is actually scraping the team division. And we don't need that. We just need the team name, or a column stating that this is the team name here. And this is exactly what we do with this replace. Then moving on, we create a list, and then we split the columns so that way we could properly format it in the list and then later break it up to put it into our data frame. And then we will insert a new column called the year, and this will help us differentiate, which year we are looking at for a particular team. And then later on, we add two columns, or we rename two columns. We have division percent and conference percent. And like I said earlier, we have duplicate columns. We have 1, 2, and 3. Looking at this table, I know that this is the division percent column because it's looking at the division record, and this is the conference because it's looking at the conference record. So this is conference percent, this is division percent, and this is overall winning percentage. So once we do that, we have our columns, and you can see that it's in a list for right now, but later we will import it into a data frame. So we have NFL team, WLT, percent, points for, points against, net points, home, road, division percent, conference, short or conference percent, non-conf, streak, last 5, and then the year. So these are the columns we are going to be working with. Okay, so the next thing we are going to look at, or the next thing that we need to complete, now that we have our column headers or grab our data values. And creating this loop took me some time because I was making one little simple mistake, and that was I forgot to reset TT back to its original value, which should be 16. My mistake was that I put TT equal to 0 here under this loop, and the loop didn't work, and it took me quite some time to figure out what was the issue. And when you're looking at so much lines of code and you have code kind of scattered all over the place, it kind of makes it harder to find what needs to be changed. But eventually we did figure out what was the issue just by slowly going over our code and understanding, or really understanding, what went wrong. So we have our variables. We have I, TT, ZZ, BB, and AB. The variable names do not really mean anything. I just have to set them equal to a value. So I is set to 0, TT is set to 16, 0 is ZZ, is 0, BB is 17, AB is 0. Then we create a list, a empty list called staging standards list. And the way we are going to scrape our data is that we are going to take the individual data values and then they will be appended to this empty list here, where it will be later transformed into a data frame. So now we can move on to the loop. So in my other project, I started off by manually typing in ticker symbols. So I had somewhat of a data set to work with, but with this project, I do not have nothing. I don't have anything to work with. I don't even have a year text file or things like that. So we had to get a little bit creative, and this is very simple here. So for years in the range of 2010 to 2021, we are going to tell the loop to do this. And because we did not specify a third argument, or we did not give a third input, it is going to iterate by 1. So once 2010 is done, it's going to go to 2011, 2012, 2013. If we had set this to 2, then it would skip to 2012, 2014, 2016, 2018. So with this loop now beginning, we are going to set years equal to a string. This year here is actually a integer, and so now we have to convert it back to a string, so that way it could be used in our link. And you can see here that our years variable is within our link. So right now we're on 2010, and then next time it'll go to 2011. Originally it'll be an integer, but after the loop is ran, it's going to convert this year variable to a string to where the link can be successfully searched. So something we've seen before, going through the basic steps of like reading the web page and putting it through the parser, but we've come across what we need to scrape. So we have our find all method, and we are going to do the tag, I believe, of table data and the attribute value of scope with nothing. And this is our data value. And then we have our team variable, and this is basically the team full name. And then once that is completed, we are going to print the link. Just the link could be placed anywhere, but placing a link here seems to work fine. So moving on, we have another loop. So while I is less than 512, we are going to perform these steps. And the reason why we set I less than 512, because in this table we have 16 columns and there are 32 NFL teams. So we are going to have, if you do 32 times 16, that is equal to 512, and that is how we come to this number. So remember that I is set to 0. So right now we're on the first position, and we are going to scrape this data value. And I is going to look at the win. So it is going to start with 12 here. Then after that, we are going to append it to the list on the outside. And then we will add 1 plus I. And then we have a if loop. If I is equal to TT, then we are going to insert the team name, and then we are going to insert the year. So if we are on, because we have 16 columns, if I is equal to TT, that would mean that we have gone through all our columns, and the only thing we need to do is just add the team name and add the specific year that we are looking at. So, we are going to insert the team name in the position of 0. So that'll put the team name first. And we have AB equal to 0 because when we scrape that link and we are looking for that team name, the 0 position has the team full name. Then after that, we are going to insert the given year, and this is set at 17. So it's going to be the last column in our list, or the last data value in our list for a given team, because we have BB set to 17 and there are only 18 columns, but our years column will be the last one in this data frame. Sorry if that's a little bit confusing. Then after that, we perform a bit of data manipulation or data cleaning. This is for our team name, and we are just basically going to clean up the text. If it has a new line character, replace it with nothing and strip all leading or trailing spaces. So once that is done, we will say TT is going to equal TT plus 16. So the next one will be 32. ZZ is equal to ZZ plus 18. Then BB is equal to BB plus 18, and AB equal to AB plus 1. Then after all that is done, if I is equal to 512 or AB is equal to 32, then reset AB to 0 as well, and then reset TT to 16. This would mean that we have fully scraped this table, and we can finally move on to the next year. So once 2010 is done, we are going to reset these values and move on to the next year until we hit 2021. From that, we have our list, and we are going to reshape our list to get it ready to be imported into our data frame. So we have 352 rows and 18 columns, as I mentioned earlier. And then finally, we are creating our data frame here. We are taking that list and putting it into the data frame, and we are going to import our columns that we scraped earlier, which is here. Then there was some more data manipulation and data cleaning that I had to do, like replacing the symbols that represent whether the team made the playoffs or not, because in this case we will eventually need to join with another data set that we have to get the division and conference name, but you guys will see that later. So you can see that when the loop is running, it goes through each and every year. We have 2010, all the way up to 2020. And this is what the data set looks like so far. And you can see that team name column is placed here because, as I mentioned earlier, we have to eventually join this with a new, with a previous data set that we had. So you can see we have the original team name, or the NFL team name. This is the one that is not scraped, and I leave this on here because those symbols represents if the team made the playoffs or not. We have all the columns we talked about earlier, but the most important column here is really the year column, because if we did not have the year column, we would have no clue as to what year we were looking at. So that's the first stage of this data set. So now we need to get our divisions and conference name for which the team plays for. Because this data set does not, or the table does not include it. Well, it does, but not in a way that was easy for us to scrape. And luckily for us, we already have that information. So it was no need to go through another headache trying to figure that out or trying to figure out how to scrape it. So we are going to use one of my favorite functions, or yes, functions. We are going to merge our data set with the current one we have now against our previous data set, which is called NFL Team Basic Information. And this really comes in handy because we have the team name and which division they play for in the conference as well. And we are going to perform an auto join because I want to see everything. It doesn't really matter if we are looking only for, well, it does matter. I want to see an auto join because I want everything to be grabbed. I want to make sure that I am not missing any teams. And we are going to join it on this team name column, which is this column here. That's why we perform that data cleaning process in this line here. So once that is merged, it is going to take the division, the conference abbreviation, and it's going to take the team name, but we've seen the team name already. Excuse me, for this part, we are going to fill in the NA values that we had for the team names that do not exist anymore. So we have the St. Louis Rams, which are the Los Angeles Rams now, Oakland Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders, San Diego Chargers, Los Angeles Chargers, Washington Redskins, Washington football team, excuse me. And we are just going to fill in what division they played in at that time. And then of course we have our conference abbreviations, just taking the first 3 characters, and then that's basically it. We get our conference name there. So now this is what our data set looks like. You can see we have the division, the conference abbreviation, the team name, and we have the NFL team, but sometimes it'll tell you if not sometimes, but this column is going to be mainly used to tell you if the team made the playoffs or not. This column here is just used to join that data set we seen earlier. And then we have the rest of the columns, and the most important one here, in my opinion, was the year. Then also we are going to scrape the legend from this link as well. So there's a legend table that the NFL has at the bottom of this page, and I thought it would be useful to use in a Power BI report because some of the symbols, someone who is not familiar with the NFL and they see these weird symbols next to the team name, they wouldn't really know what it stands for. So the legend here is just in case, or it's going to be used as a guide in one of our Power BI reports. After we scrape the legend, we are going to export those 2 data frames. So we have our final stand-ins data frame that gets exported, and then we have our legend data frame. And we could quickly take a look at those data frames as well. All right, so this is our data frame here. And the thing about Excel, even though this is a CSV file, for some reason Excel decides to change some data values to a date if it thinks it recognizes a date. Like we have this 8-0 record here, but this record earlier might have represented a date to Excel, but it could have been like a 7-1 record, and then Excel just decided to change it to 7/1/2000. And if I try to go back and change it, it just changes it back to a number. So what we have to do is import our data set into Excel, because in the data set, in the back end of the data set, or in the text file itself, or the CSV file itself, all values are correct, but in Excel it's changing it to different data values automatically, and I don't know why. But this won't be an issue when we are importing it into our SSIS package or our SQL database, because they are not going to automatically decide what type of data set it is or data type it is. And if it do, I can easily change that. Okay, so now you can see that, yeah, that data value was looking at earlier where Excel had it as 7/1/2000. It's actually a home record of 7 and 1. So as I was saying earlier, Excel just uh, likes to automatically change that data type. So if we go ahead and load it in, we should be fine now. And there you go, we don't have any more of those dates. Our team name appears to be fine. So that is it for this data frame, and we could move on to the next data set now.